an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle, Book 6, Underlord, Chapters 19, 20, and Epilogue. In these chapters, I didn't get anything I wanted. Everybody advanced. You know what? I'm lying. I got one thing. But oh my God, Kiro died. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. This is the first time in probably 3 books that I have not gone back and reread the section right before recording because it was too painful to reread. Everything, like, in terms of advancement goes well. But otherwise, not really. Like, all I wanted, the only thing I wanted, was for Daji to die and for Kiro to live. I got the opposite of that. I wanted Mercy and Yerin and Lindon to be on the same team. Not only did they get split up, but Yerin and Lindon get split up from each other, leaving Yerin alone, which is what she's like afraid of. Worst possible scenario. And the one thing that I will say that bucked me up a little bit at the end is seeing Orthos. That was a balm, I will admit. But you guys, I wasn't ready for the way this went. I really wasn't. And look, I'm not mad about it. I'm not angry. Well, that's not entirely true. I'm a tiny bit angry about Kiro. I am. But I will say that Will White has been generous so far in most of the bad guys getting what's coming to them. And I guess it's only fair that we eventually come up against somebody insufferable like Daji who doesn't die right away. I guess. And I mean, they aren't apparently going to be part of this like tournament, right? So that's cool. Are they? I mean, they're not selected to represent the Akura clan, I guess. But can they potentially compete anyway? What I'm worried about is basically, you know, Daji and Mira are still out there. And this group is responsible for the death of his brother and the guy she's obsessed with. And Lindon specifically is responsible for Kiro's death. But Yerin is responsible for keeping Mira from getting to Kiro in time to save him. And, I mean, then there's Mercy, basically. She specifically ties Daji up to keep him from getting there to save his brother as well. All of them would be seen as equally at fault. So what I'm saying is if Mira and Daji do indeed become part of this tournament, these 3 are going to have to watch their backs so hard because there is going to be hell to pay. And I mean, it's just a lucky thing that the king himself can't compete because I feel like he would rip Lindon limb from limb. Lindon is responsible for some pretty high profile deaths at this point. And, you know, we saw that he was like, what was it, like number 97 or something on the list of top 100 high golds or true golds. If he were still True Gold when he killed Kiro, would he be rated higher because he killed Kiro? Like, I would love to know what factors play into the ratings, because it seems sort of like your credit score, where, like, you know, you get your score and you accept that that's what it is because there's really not a whole lot to be done. And they use a lot of criterion to determine what your score is that you're not privy to. But yeah, so guys, all right, let's talk about Mercy, because we get information about what's going on with her. And I am feeling a little bit smug over how close I was on my guess at what was going on there. So it turns out Mercy was such a genius when she was born that they had to actually suppress the strength of her legacy because it might put too much burden on her spirit. She is just smoking everybody in her, like, peer groups during all of her classes. She's setting all kinds of records and shit, like, just really blowing through things. And then it says, the children of Akura Malice must prove themselves in order to be acknowledged as the monarch's true sons and daughters. Over the centuries, 108 children fail to inherit a sufficient measure of her talent and are relegated to distant branches of the family. They have no rights as Malice's children and never meet their mother after the day of their birth. Oh, that's harsh shit. And honestly, we finally meet Malice, who shows up. I thought it was going to be Charity. I thought it might even be Mercy. But it is the Monarch herself. The Monarch! And she isn't as horrifying as I thought she'd be. She's actually rather kind to her daughter and, like, indulgent of her and sort of seems affectionate. And I wasn't expecting any of that. And especially after reading this, I wasn't expecting any of that. Which just goes to show how much of a favorite Mercy must be. Even for favored children, they have no chance to prove themselves to their mother before reaching Low Gold. At that point, if they inherit one of her books or demonstrate enough talent in another area, she will favor them with an audience. Even before advancing to Copper, Mercy meets with her mother at least once a year. At least once a year before advancing to Copper. Buh. So when I was over here like, oh, Mercy wants to, like, catch a glimpse of her mother. Mercy never see, like, what is that relationship like? I thought it was really terrible. And I mean, it is. But also, it's way better than with any of her other children ever. So, yikes. How many children does this bitch pump out anyway? Akura Malice fucks. Who's she getting knocked up by? What's up with her? Curiouser and curiouser. Who's Mercy's dad? I wonder. Instead of a remnant, Malice's direct descendants attempt to bond with divine treasures created by their predecessors. These books require an open soul space as well as a jade core, so special and expensive means are used to open the soul space early without harming the child. Andy says, who's she getting knocked up by? Whoever she wants. True enough. Brian says, Will White has said she canonically has a harem. Good for her. Get it, girl. I'm just picturing, have you guys seen History of the World Part 1? Where she's choosing who she's gonna fuck for her, like, tonight's orgy, and she has all of the men jog into the throne room without pants on, and she's just watching them with, like, her head bouncing up and down as she watches them. That's what I'm picturing. Oh, anyway. So, it turns out there's one book that nobody has ever been able to claim. And it is literally Malice's, like, wish list. Like, if she could go back and start over and fix it and do things the way because this is really like kind of a nice nod to the fact that living in this universe where you advance and you choose paths and whatever is very much like a video game where you choose things that you decide you're going to pour all of your like leveling up points into. And you only hope that that actually turns out to pay off. And sometimes you will be 3/4 of the way through the game and you realize you just poured all your points into the wrong shit. And you like really leaned a ton on like charisma. And that actually doesn't matter in this game, you know? And I mean, that's how life is too, right? I mean, I think a lot of us, if we could go back and redo what we went to college for, or the, you know, subjects that we focused on in school when we were in grade school, we would change a lot of the things that we decided to prioritize. And basically what Malice has done is like created a roadmap to what she considers optimal performance on this path. And everybody gets a chance to try and activate this book, and nobody does it except Mercy. When Mercy sees it, she falls into a trance, and the book, which is like alive, is like, oh, she's perfect. Yes. And by the time her tutors report the incident to Malice, her bonding is already complete. She is low gold. That night, her mother declares Mercy her heir. A word, she's the heir. It's really quite something to go from Malice to Mercy. You know? Symbolism. Mercy passes through gold with ease, setting new family records at every turn. She is the object of jealousy, admiration, fear, and awe in the clan. As she grows, she learns more of her family. She does not like what she sees. They scrape and debase themselves before those more powerful than they, while demanding those beneath them do the same. Their behavior is undignified. It's petty. Mercy is determined to do better. She treats those beneath her with respect, and her kindness becomes legend within the servants of the clan. There are those who wonder if her mother looked into the future to give her a fitting name, for there is truly mercy in her soul. By the time she's reached the peak of true gold, she knows she has escaped the trap that has ensnared the rest of her family. She does not demean herself for approval or elevate the opinions of the powerful as they do. She practices the sacred arts for the benefit of others. Then she discovers her Underlord revelation. The truth frightens her. Spoilers! Her revelation is that she practices the sacred arts so that her mother will be proud of her. Which, yeah, when you just have been like judging everyone around you for valuing your mother and her minions' opinions of you, and you realize that's what's driving you too, yikes, that is going to be a bit of a slap in the face. Like, and I feel like this just makes such sense when she's just like, I don't want to accept that about myself. And they keep trying to tell her, what you are now is not who you will be. And she's very young, you know? It's really hard to shake wanting to please your parents. It's just something that for some people you never do shake. You want your parents to be proud. And it's like a real shame that it gets that ingrained, because even when you know maybe your parents are trash, you might have parents who are toxic, abusive, bad people. They're out there. They sure do exist. And yet, you still kind of want like that look in their eye when you tell them you're doing something. And it's just really hard. You know, I understand her being so frustrated by that, but also Mercy. Join the club, kid. You have a truth that you don't like. What else is new, you know? I really wonder what Harmony's was. Like, he hadn't figured his out yet. And the tree had told him to risk his life in order to find out what the truth was. And he goes ahead and does that, and he winds up dying. And I sort of was like thinking, is there a hint of him realizing the truth about himself while he's fighting Lindon? But I think if there had been, perhaps he could have like advanced while he was trapped, and by the time North Strider got there, he would have leveled up. I'm not sure if that would be possible while the world is breaking or not, though. And he hadn't leveled up. So Harmony, I guess, just never really like knew himself. And I don't know why, but Harmony fascinates me a little bit still, even after he's dead and gone. And I wonder what his motivation was for himself, you know? So basically, Mercy meets with her mother and is like, look, I just found out that this is my thing. I'm really not happy with this. Can I please leave the clan for a time and forge my own way without all of the advantages given to me by the family and see who I am? And basically what she's doing is like, I'm going to take a year off before college and go backpacking and find myself. And her mom's like, okay, but I'm going to take back a bunch of your advancement, and I'm going to take back a bunch of your, like, what's the word I want? Coordination and just your ability to fucking function. And you're going to have to make do without the stuff that you inherited from me and from family training. And if you want to advance from there, you're going to have to do so completely on your own. She may keep only her personal belongings as well as her bow and her book, for neither of those can be taken from her without damaging her spirit. However, as a Logold, she will be able to evoke only a small fraction of their power. So they make a bet. As long as Mercy can survive on her own under such limitations without the full measure of her talent or her family's support, Malice will place no requirements on her. She will live without the weight of responsibility as she pleases. However, if she cannot, if she fails or dies, then she must embrace her identity and become the heir to the Akura clan once again. And I really enjoy this a lot because while I completely understand Mercy's interest in doing things for herself, and I respect it, I really do. Like, I've been saying throughout this series how unfair this whole thing is. And Mercy seems to like understand that and really wishes she could do something about it, and maybe she will be able to eventually. There's also something to be said for using the privilege that you have as leverage. And the fact that that is why she manages to like, that's the thing that causes her to lose the bet, is that she is doing it to protect her friends. She sacrifices her pride for the lives of her friends. That's noble. That's a great reason to lose the bet. That's an honorable thing. And I honestly think her mother is probably pretty proud of her that it took something like this for her to finally be like, all right, fine, I need help. And it's the sort of thing that I think when she looks back, she'll realize that was kind of a turning point for her as a person, realizing that her pride is worth a lot, but in some ways there will come a point where if you keep putting that first, you're no better than the fucking like family dynamic that you're attempting to fight back against, because everybody is so motivated by pride in this universe, you know? Just because of how the power structure works, it kind of can't be helped to a point. So as we go back into the present and she's realizing that she lost the bet, she's feeling really sad. And here comes this woman. She was beautiful, with a full figure and the poise of a queen. In my imagination, when this author says full figure, I'm thinking a curvy plus-size bitch. Maybe not as curvy as myself, but I'm thinking a good like size 14, 16. Because he specifically will talk about women being extremely slender during other points. So I feel like that has to be what he's saying. And she is wearing a black dress with a web of delicate silver chains, which I cannot help it. I kept picturing, what's her name in, oh my God, she wears the chainmail dress in the Tina Turner in, help me out guys, you know the movie. But that dress apparently, which was made of like chainmail, apparently weighed something like 80 pounds or 100 pounds. And all of these like webs connect in spots with huge amethysts. So, yeah. Andy says Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. That's the one, Andy. Thank you. Mordecai says, I keep thinking of Dita Von Teese. Ooh, Dita Von Teese is like a size 4. That ain't no full figure. I'm not on board. I'll find somebody who I can like put a face to. I don't have a good face in mind. Actually, I kind of do. You know who I'm picturing's face? Gina Torres. I don't know what that's about. Her hair flowed down to the small of her back, darker even than the night surrounding her. It hardly looked like it was made from real strands, but from liquid smoke or boiling shadow. She just sounds so cool. Oh, it does say her skin's pale, so I guess Gina Torres wouldn't work. But you know what? I'm going with Gina anyway. And Mercy says, hello, mother. And Malice says, so, you lose? You admit it? And Mercy's like, yeah, I admit it. And she says, okay, I don't want you to feel like this is the end of things for you, though. Power is the ability to do as you wish. You will always be the toy of those who have more of it than you do. You have seen that. And Mercy says, I do, but like, why is everybody else like the way they are? She says they would sell their own firstborn if they thought you would grant them favor. Why? Why do we have to beg and crawl for every scrap? And Akura Malice says, you don't. And I was like, okay, no, she doesn't. And that's cool. But she's asking a valid question and that's not an answer. And it's just, it shouldn't be this way. Nobody should have to. The fact that it's like, you don't. Yeah, but what about literally everyone else? That's what she's worried about. So she heals Mercy. And she says, as Akura Mercy, do you agree to abide by the restrictions of our pact? And Mercy says, I will return to the family and my role and responsibilities therein. And Mercy gets back her power, her ascension, and she gets back her physical talents. And Mercy is just so happy to like feel her body return to her control again and gets teary-eyed. And this was something that I weirdly related to. I've been really struggling over this past year to get back into some sort of physical fitness. And I've been trying to really focus on that rather than weight loss as much as I can, because I really believe that if I am meant to lose weight, that will follow. But physical fitness is really the primary thing that I need to work on. And more than once over this past year, I have been performing some sort of exercise, whether it be like tearing away on the elliptical or doing like a Zumba class and being really like on point with it, where I have felt my eyes tear up while I'm doing the thing, because it is a kind of power and coordination that I haven't felt in my body in a long time. And it's familiar. Once I begin to do it, I'm like, this is what it felt like way back when I was like really in shape. Here it is again. But when you lose it, there's a real feeling of distance from that feeling that seems as if you're never going to get it back again. And that really reminded me of a couple of those moments. And it's weird to be in the middle of Zumba class in a upbeat song that you really like and you're really killing it, and then feel like you're going to burst into tears. It's like very incongruous. So she does like a backflip just for the fun of it and admits that like losing that physical thing is the worst part. And her mother says to strip away what the family gave you. I had to include your puppeteer's iron body and the results of your training. Even with your spirit restricted, you would have had it too easy. Malice rarely explained herself, but she looked as though she was relishing her daughter's joy. That warmed Mercy's heart, and she squeezed Malice's fingers in return. I am so curious about the puppeteer's iron body and exactly what that means, because it sounds like something that's very acrobatic, especially the fact that she did these back handsprings. And this is sort of putting me in mind of a character from Airbender, and I had been low-key picturing her face a little bit anyway with Mercy, and now it feels like very on point because she's also an extremely enthusiastic, kind-hearted person. Malice says the others curry favor with me because they can strive for nothing more. You should be different. And I guess but they shouldn't be treated can we not have it be this hierarchy of the way people are respected and treated either? So she says, I expect you to advance immediately. I need you as an underlady, not a gold. Once you have, report directly to Charity for transport. You may not return to the Black Flame Empire. And her mother says, you will lead our team in the Uncrowned King tournament. Fury and Pride will be informed. I expect you to represent us in the individual matches, so your instruction will resume at an increased pace. You have missed a year of training, and I need you in shape. And Mercy's like, so wait, I'm reporting to Charity? You're not taking me back with you? And her mother's like, I was under the impression you had some shit to do. And Mercy asks her mother to save her friends, and her mom is like, they don't need me. They need you. You're going to do it. So then we go to Kiro. It breaks my heart, you guys. It breaks my heart. Daji was the one. Daji should have died. I'm so mad about it. So he has really taken a fucking beating. He is not doing well. And Kiro is beginning to really realize, oh my God, this dude might kill me. He's a fucking true gold and I'm an underlord. And he might kill me. I'm going to have to really go at him. Because if I leave him any openings, that's it. And he is hammering at Lindon. And Lindon just keeps kind of dodging things in a way that he's like, how does he keep knowing where I'm going to hit? And I'm assuming that's all down to Dross, telling Lindon what's about to come at him. And he turns and runs. And what winds up being the plan here is Dross is aware that there's a Dream Madra chamber that will be extremely distracting, just purely visually for a moment. And then if Lindon can get Kiro in there, that will buy them enough time that Lindon will be able to advance. And there is this moment that I almost thought there was an illusion of Lindon that Kiro was fighting, and it turns out that's not actually it, but I had a moment of being like, did Lindon make it look like he's standing there and he's behind him or something? And I love to, as we jump from character to character, everybody's point of view from the Seishin Kingdom keeps being it looked like Kiro was fighting for his life, but that couldn't be right. It looked like Mira was struggling to escape Yerin, but that couldn't be right. And it's just a bunch of them seeing the other in peril, but it just doesn't make sense to them. And they can't accept what they're seeing in front of their face because it's just, no, that's not right. So he runs around the corner and he comes at Lindon. And uses this, like, sword again, and Lindon catches it in the palm of his hand. A binding triggered deep inside, and Kiro felt his Titan's blade destabilize, the technique fading. He pulled his sword back, its length ordinary again. The True Gold stood in front of a natural treasure display, panting and cradling his broken prosthetic arm. It was difficult to look past him. The light from the display shifted and danced, and it was hard to make out exactly what was in there. At first, it looked as though the nook was filled with living creatures, scuttling and squirming. But then, Kiro would have sworn it was filled with paintings. Actual paintings, framed in canvas, or spread out on huge wall scrolls, decorated every surface. But no, maybe they were statues. And he's looking, like, trying to clear his eyes. And Lindon dips behind Kiro. Kiro turns to try and, like, hit him again. And his blade slams into Lindon's arms. And Lindon shoves him back into the display. And at this point, we go to Daji, and he doesn't recognize. It turns out for everybody, the appearance of the monarch just was a flash, almost like a blink. Everything turned dark for a flicker. It's like when the lights almost go out during a storm. And he can't figure out what happened. And he's looking around and, had been saying to himself, well, I'm sure that the sage won't hold me responsible for Mercy dying. And then he sees that Mercy's okay. And his first response is like, oh, thank God. Because he was really concerned about it. And as he's like running to help his brother, at first he comes to try and help Mira. Because he thinks helping Mira, since Mira is known to be stronger than his brother, as much as his own father won't admit that, he feels if he helps Mira, that will be a huge, like, coup for him to be able to lead on if he saves her. But she yells for him to go and help Kiro. So he's like, okay, I'm going to do that. And Daji sauntered forward, waiting for his brother to emerge from the natural treasure display. Most of these nooks didn't contain anything dangerous to an Underlord. Even if they did, if it didn't kill him immediately, Kiro would only have to take one step to leave. But he didn't take that step. A spark of concern kindled in Daji's chest, and anger along with it. How dare this True Gold touch his brother? And Daji yells, and he draws Lindon's attention, and Lindon opens the void key and reaches in there for a weapon, and Daji's like, oh, it's on. And he's about to pull his own, what does he have, axes? Swords out, when he gets gripped up, hauled off, and dragged around the corner. And honestly, I want to see it so bad. I want to see this. He's able to tear himself free, and he's like stands up and looking around trying to figure out who did it. And this is when he sees Akura Mercy, and it's like, oh, thank God. But he can't understand how she survived. He's like, there's not even injuries, It's not like she managed to pull through despite everything. She seems fine. And he's like, she's True Gold again. How did this happen? So Mercy asks, why did you have to threaten them? Do you think killing them will make Aunt Charity happy? And when he hears her say Aunt Charity, all of a sudden he's like, oh, fuck. Maybe this would have been worse than I thought if she was still dead. And at this point, I maybe should make nice if I can. But he can't even make nice. He just is like, this isn't a game. How about this? And just keeps on doing shit. He just can't help his fucking self. He wasn't allowed to kill her, but he hadn't seen her use any big destructive techniques. She would be trapped in there while he rejoined Kiro and Mira. So he makes this stone wall around her. Daji ran away, proud of himself. Kiro had looked like he was in the most trouble, so Daji would go to him first. Then the aura of the vault shifted like a river suddenly changing course. Suddenly, a spirit began to swell with power. So, we go then to Yerin. And Yerin sees Daji coming and really is like, I guess this is it. But Mira tells Daji to go help Kiro. So she's like, oh, okay, maybe I still do have a chance. And she's using the endless spirit or the endless sword technique with her blood shadow. And I really enjoyed Daji seeing the blood shadow and trying to make some sense of it. And at one point she checks in with herself and realizes that like her lifeline is almost completely gone. There's just this like vapor. She's on the very brink of death at this point. And she begins to like collapse, and Yerin is trying to like keep it going up until the very last second because she senses that Lindon is beginning to advance, and she's at least determined to distract Mira long enough to keep her from going and interrupting Lindon's advancement. And when Mira notices, because everybody can sense when he's about to advance, the feel of it is like, it's palpable. When he begins, Mira turns her attention to that because this is the last thing that Kiro or Mira wanted. Like, they're all very aware of what a threat Lindon is at True Gold. The sensation of that dude beginning to advance to Underlord is truly worrisome. This is the opposite of what they were working toward here. And so it's not surprising that she's like turns her head in that direction. And at this point, Yerin stabs Mira through the helmet, like through the eye. And I really thought it was over for that hoe. When am I going to learn? I figured if you pierce the like brain, I thought that would be enough. That even if you can have healing power, that only works if you didn't get like got in an area that controls using that ability. But evidently not. And it turns out that tree that she created when she was holding on to Kiro, that is a byproduct of the healing that she uses. So that tree begins to appear here as well because she is healing herself. And Yerin scoots over to her blood shadow and is like, she basically is determined to like hide behind it while she advances. And we go back to Lindon, and he sees Daji coming at him, and the fact that Daji's swords are bloody makes him really, really worried about Mercy, because Lindon's a good boy. But then he sees that she's fine, and he's like, well, that's weird. What the hell? So once Daji gets grabbed and yanked back, Lindon's like, all right, let's do this. And he gets down with Dross, like, prompting him, and begins his advancement to Underlord. And this transformation is really interesting. Soulfire flooded out of him, passing through his clothes and armor without harming them, consuming the natural treasures piled around him. The gray fire swelled until he blazed with it. Then it focused in on him. Everywhere the soulfire passed, he was reborn, remade. His Madra channels were rebuilt even as they burned away. His bones strengthened and reinforced. Impurities in his spirit cleansed. It wasn't painful. It felt like he was being scrubbed clean for the first time in his life. He couldn't move his body well, but he could still control his spirit. He triggered the hunger binding in his arm, then thanked the heavens when it worked. The power in the archstone churned like water swirling down an unplugged drain, funneling down into his arm. The limb flooded with power, far more than it could normally hold, but Lindon kept the binding going. Only an instant later, the stone cracked, shattering into pieces, and Lindon took control. He touched the fragments with his pure Madra, binding them to his remnant arm. He focused his will on forging them together, holding the image of his new arm in his mind. The power of ghost water made it easy to keep the images in his mind, and the simulated practice gave him perfect timing. Shredded pieces of white Madra melded together, fusing to the limb and repairing it, chunks of Madra filling in as he watched. The jagged edges of the skeletal remnant arm smoothed out according to his mental vision, forming into a rough model of a human hand. So he winds up with what looks like a regular old human arm, but it's just pure white, which is pretty wild sounding. Honestly, I was a big fan of him being on Black Flame Path with a white remnant skeleton arm, because that sounded really dope. But I'm sure that this is much more practical, and it's fine. I just thought that was pretty cool. And Lindon is noticing finally when he comes back to himself, it happens really quick, that he can't feel Yerin anymore, and he gets really worried about it. And he jumps up and heads over there and realizes that Yerin is right on the edge. And he ignores Kiro. Kiro's coming out of the dream display at this point. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to have to save Yerin, because once Kiro heads over there, that's curtains. That's it. Mira was covered in overwhelming life Madra, which had bloomed into the form of a tree. He couldn't imagine anything killing her with that much life energy running through her, but that didn't mean he wouldn't try. And he uses the axe that he hadn't been able to activate before because he wasn't Underlord level. The red light running down the savage blade strengthened, rolling like crimson waves, and spectral hands of Madra began to reach out of the weapon as the binding activated. As he was about to release the striker technique in the axe, his spirit flared a warning and he spun back. Kiro had fired the technique in his sword. At the same time, he'd released his own striker technique from his left hand. Lindon swung the axe. Blood and destruction Madra erupted from the axe, forming into a wave of red spectral hands. Thousands of spindly arms stretched out from the blade, reaching for Kiro. His striker techniques punched through the cloud of Madra, destroying a few hands, but there were many more to replace them. His attacks were swallowed up as though they had landed in the sea. Scarlet fingertips clawed forward in a flood, wailing loud enough to hurt Lindon's ears. They swept down the hallway without slowing, but all Lindon could see was a wall of red. What had it done to Kiro? Yo, that's insane. I can't even picture that. I can't even make any sense of that. That brain, my brain just doesn't want to do anything with that image. Hands that are spindly and red and also scream and come out of an axe blade? Yikes. Yikes. Okay. And there is this giant fucking stone remnant that doesn't seem at all interested in fighting. I thought, oh man, the remnant, I forgot about that. It turns out to just not really be, and that makes sense because Kiro didn't want to be here. Kiro was doing this because of obligation. It wasn't because he wanted to, have this fight. So yeah, the fact that it just wanders off, that feels right to me. But I can't tell you how devastated I was that he was dead. Because I really thought maybe this big boulder-headed remnant is actually Daji's remnant. I was still clinging to hope. But no, we see Daji later and all of my hopes were dashed. So then we go to Mercy's POV in chapter 20. And I love Mercy, almost ready to cry again with how wonderful it is to fight with her full abilities. And she actually is able to take aim at Daji through the wall that he left up. So she let's see. The nightworm venom technique would eat into his armor, corrupting it, leaving him stripped of its power. He would have to tangle with that while she waited for the wall to fall, but she couldn't afford to wait around. Yerin was in danger. So this is when she sits down and advances and says, I walk my path so my mother will be proud of me. And I was like, oh, honey, that is rough. Makes sense. I get it. And she advances to Underlady, and she's delighted, but doesn't have any time left to just enjoy it, because she goes to chapter 2, page 4, and her arrow shatters the wall, and she walks up to Daji and puts a hand on his head and says to him, learn from this, and wraps him in a cocoon of shadow. She says, learn from this. That is a baller line. What a G. Oh, I loved it. I loved it so much. So at this point, she sees Lindon running by to help Yerin, and he's already advanced, and she's like, whoa, because he looks really different. And once we're in Yerin's perspective as well, it's really clear what a difference advancement makes to some people's appearance. It doesn't seem like it's everybody, because Mercy seems like she looks mostly the same, but she's taller, and that's kind of the only physical difference. But Lindon seems really changed, and I have to wonder if that's like an effect of somebody's spirit being like a little bit like, if does the quality of someone's spirit or the tone of it change the way they physically look, since their soul fire is what forges the new body? Does that have something to do with it? I just wonder about it. So Mira is staring at Yerin, saying, if Kiro is dead, I will kill your friends. I will kill your family. I will kill everyone you've ever loved, you've ever known. I will kill and kill and kill until you wade through a river of blood with every step. Mira, honestly, you are pretty scary. I'm not going to lie to you. And Yerin says to Mira, he's dead, which honestly, I can't decide if I'm impressed that she had the balls to say that to Mira, or if I'm like, why did you do that? Just don't tell her right now. The blood shadow at this point starts laughing, and Yerin is just like, oh God, that's so creepy. Like, I love her reaction. So she goes over to the sword display because she needs her some sword modra to manipulate right here. And at this point, Lindon comes running up. Oh, don't you look all bright and shiny new? And, oh no, she says that to Mira, my bad. Because Mira healed herself. How many pieces am I going to have to cut you into? Let's find out. And she uses the sword aura and absolutely like fucking devastates. Mira doesn't die somehow, and I'm assuming it's just she has so much life essence that she's working with. But it is really like more than she might have been able to survive had she not been directly connected at that point, because she's still like sort of forced to stay in one place due to that tree that has healed her. And her hair gets shredded, her clothes get shredded, she falls to the ground, and her scythe, like, she loses control of that. And Yerin, like, can't move at this point, and is like, when her remnant begins to unfold, I am just going to be screwed. And this is when Lindon and Mercy show up, and Yerin begins to like realize, oh my God, her remnant's not coming. She's not dead. Are we serious? So let's see. Lindon looked like an entirely different person. His right arm looked like a human's arm now, only chalk white, and she was surprised at how much better it suited him than the monster limb. His sky-sworn armor was cracked all over the place, but he carried it lightly. It was the smallest details that showed the largest change. The Soulfire transformation left him looking healthier than ever. His skin was clearer, his chin more defined, and he seemed to stand straighter. He looked like he had aged 5 years, but in the best possible way. He looked less like a sect leader's evil son, and more like, well, a sect leader. And I'm like, ooh, Lindon got hot, is what she's saying. His skin is clearer. He got more of a jawline. He's standing up with better posture. And she's just like, ooh, check it out. And I'm just, Yerin, just hook up with him. Just go ahead, girl. Please, just do us all a favor and just like ride it out. All right? Just do it. So Mira is still fucking healing because she's a monster who won't die. And Lindon catches Yerin while she's about to fall. And he has all the treasures ready and is like, all right, you ready to do this? Because we really need to. And Lindon, for his part, is really, really worried. When he can sense how thin her lifeline is, it's like borderline panic, and he is trying so hard to just keep himself under control enough to be able to help her advance because the panic is real. And I love, she doesn't say I train in the sacred arts because I don't want to hurt anymore. It's not that simple. She says, because I don't like people around me dying and it hurts and I'm afraid I'll have to feel that again. So I try to get stronger so I won't have to. And that's all. I love that she just like convolutes it, almost like she's hoping if she says too many words at once, they won't be able to quite follow the thought and they won't know what it is. And finally, the advancement begins to take over. And then we cut to Lindon, who is looking at her change because now she looks really different. Her gold signs look totally real. Her scars are all gone and her skin is completely clear, which she had been covered with so many. It was part of what she looked like. That was just Yerin. And now it's gone and it's really strange. Her eyes seemed deeper and she looked more mature. She hadn't grown any, but that made him feel too tall. More than anything, she was alive. Her lifeline, which only a moment ago had been a breath away from fading out, now shone as healthy as a young sapling. The relief was so strong it shook him physically. His fingers trembled and he leaned back against the wall. How many seconds had he been from losing her? And Mercy is just sobbing, crying, and wraps her arms around Yerin and is just saying, I'm glad. I'm really glad. And I'm just like, Mercy, why are you so adorable? Oh, she's so sweet. And even Yerin's getting like teary-eyed. And I love Yerin uses some of the sword madra to like cut her hair with like hardly any effort. Because it has grown and it's in her face. And she is about to chop the back off. And Mercy says, I think it looks nice. And Lindon says, so do I. And as soon as he says, so do I, she stops. And I'm like, I see you. So, Dross is squinting at Mercy. Who are you? I'm warning you. I have a large sacred artist attached to me. He fights. Oh, I love this. So yeah, it didn't occur to me that when Mercy shows up as an underlady, nobody would like believe that she'd really advanced because she's been able to advance artificially with this book before. Of course, they would kind of think that that was probably what it was. I mean, Yerin knows that the book can't do that for her because they've talked about it. But Lindon doesn't know that. So yeah, he is very surprised. And Mercy explains a little bit about what was going on with her, you know, spirit being suppressed. And at this point, Akura Charity, like Mercy calls out to her and says, we won. And Charity says, they have won. You've lost. And Lindon thinks she means, no, you haven't won. the Sation Kingdom has won. He doesn't understand that she's speaking specifically to Mercy about her bed. And let's see, Mercy says, you promised me a favor. And Charity says, I will add a gift of my own to the Black Flame Empire in compensation. I will also allow each of you to take all that you can carry from this place. And Lindon's void key just zips open automatically, and he starts like apologizing. And I love it. It's sort of as if he just like got like a greed boner and couldn't control the fact that when she said that, he was like, word, and just like popped that shit open, and he had no control over it for a second. And then has to be like, oh, sorry. God, that is so embarrassing. Like, oh, that is so funny to me. So he's wondering if maybe he could go get Kiro's remnant, and then feels like kind of gross about wondering that. And Dross for himself is also like, yeah, what happened to the remnant actually? And we don't find out about that. I am curious because I feel like I want something to be done with it out of respect for Kiro, actually, because I like that guy, and I feel like his remnant probably has some like valuable information. But also, I hate the idea of it being used by somebody who killed him. As much as I love Lindon, he didn't ever get the chance to really appreciate that Kiro was a good person because of the position he was put into. So Charity is basically just like, all right, well, we're going to have to leave soon. And Yerin says, you warned them, didn't you? And not Yerin, Mercy says, you put us all in danger. And they're all just like, are you serious? And Charity tries to be like, everything was under control. And I'm like, yeah, it was. That's kind of their complaint. I don't know if you like heard what they said. So they fill up on as much shit as they can carry. They go outside. And there is this awful moment where the Sation King like finds out that Kiro died. And honestly, I don't like the guy, but that was the first time that I like felt for him at all. He was an abusive, shitty dad, but in his like fucked up way, he did clearly love his son. And the reaction he has is just brutal. And not only that, but she says, I've chosen the 3 young Underlords who will represent the Western vassals of the Akura family. They are all 3 from the Black Flame Empire. I award the Black Flame Empire 300 million high-grade scales. In addition, to ease reparations caused by this competition, I will gift the Emperor with an Archlord defensive construct from my own collection, which is pretty crazy. And then, for the Sation Kingdom, you've trained your true golds well, and you've raised many new Underlords. I hope that the benefits you've reaped from the Nightwheel Valley will serve you well. That's it. She's like, oh, you got your gift. That is rough. So, I just can't, guys. That is so brutal. This whole scene is hard to watch unfold. And they leave the fucking Sations with the king like trying desperately to get somebody to tell him what the fuck happened. I should mention both Mira and Daji are unconscious. So they can't, he'll find out. He'll find out what happened, but there's nobody to say right now. And at this point, everybody begins to walk away, and somebody stops. Mercy stops. She's the first one. And they realize that she's not going to be coming with them because she has to return to her family. And there's this really sweet goodbye between her and Yerin, where Yerin this time throws her arms around Mercy and is genuinely like, there's an affection that has grown on Yerin's side of things that I appreciated a lot. But Yerin very nearly like crushes Mercy to death in that hug. So then, as they continue to walk away, Charity says, "Where are you going?" And then I realized what she was going to do. And I was like, oh, no, you don't, you bitch. But she does. First, she takes Harmony's weapon back. And she says, like, you opposed a member of the Akura family. You owe us a debt. And I really appreciated Lindon standing up to himself here and tells her, I offered to take him back, and he said he would slaughter everybody in my family and never rest until they were destroyed. I didn't kill him, but I did leave him, yes. And there's no apology there, which I really deeply appreciated. Something flashed across Charity's face, but he couldn't tell if it was anger, grief, regret, or something entirely different. I like to think it was regret, that she knows he's telling the truth because she knows what Harmony was like. And she's kind of pissed at Harmony. I like to think that's her being just like, fucking Harmony, you couldn't have just let him help you out. No, you had to be a fucking asshole. I bet that's what she's thinking. So he thinks when she says, I don't select you as a representative of the Black Flame Empire, he thinks that means that he's not going to get to compete anyway, like at all. And I knew what she was really about to do. And soon enough, she's like, yeah, you're going to represent the Akura clan. And before he can even say anything, she says, he tries to be like, I'm not good enough. And she's like, no, you're not. Training starts now. And he begins to sink into darkness. And he looks up to Yerin, who's watching him, and she can't do a thing about it. And all I can do is just say apologies as he disappears. Oh, I got so mad, you guys. I got so mad. Ugh, so mad. So I really don't have any time, but I have to. The epilogue. Suriel is realizing that shit is really beginning to pop off. Worlds are being attacked at a rate that they weren't ready for. And the judges are really being spread pretty thin. And she goes through a way to, goes into to see a certain world. 943. And there's nothing there. And at first she thinks that it's been cut off. And then she realizes it's just gone. And there's like tiny pieces of it floating around. But it's pretty much like completely annihilated. And she's looking at it like, what the fuck could have done this? And her presence says, oh, you know what did this. And she realizes that it's the Reaper's Scythe, which either what's-his-face went rogue or somebody stole it, maybe. But, yeah, that seems like an emergency situation is beginning to happen over there. Then we go to Yerin. She is very depressed. She's just like, everybody's celebrating and drinking and cheering, and she's got her fucking head on the table. One of her sword arms coming off her back is just dangling in her soup, which is just, I find that so funny, that image. And Ethan, in this like bright pink robe, comes and sits down next to her and is like, congratulations. And she's like, congratulations on what? Everybody that I talked to at all is gone. And Ethan is like, trying to be like, I'm still here. And she's not picking up on that at all, which just warmed my heart. And finally he says, they picked our team. And she's like, yeah, okay. And he tells her that she's on it. And she's like relieved, even though she was pretty certain she would be on it. And then she's like, but who even is left? And he says, we have you and Narusea, the Emperor's sister. And I was like, sweet. Yes, I want to know more about that bitch. So I'm very excited about that. And then she's like, okay, but who's the third one? And she's like, yeah, who? And he's like, somebody of great esteem and high standing and who's a leader, natural born, captain. She's like, but who? And he's just smiling, and she's like, no, but who? And he says, I'm only 34. How old did you think I was? And I was like, I fucking knew it. When at one point their Charity's talking about how one of the Underlords of the Black Flame Empire she has already long decided would be on that team. I was like, okay, so that's clearly Ethan. And then there's like the other two that she was thinking of were Lindon and Yerin. Because I knew that Ethan was like trying to be like, oh, these three. And I was like, I don't think so. But I didn't think that Mercy was going to go back to her own family exactly. I don't know what I was thinking. I was pretty certain that it was going to be Ethan and Yerin and Lindon. Turns out that I was wrong in part. But the fact that Ethan hadn't even occurred to Yerin just makes me laugh. So then we have the final thing, the final section where there are all these Underlords that are getting selected for their positions. And they're going to be seeing their monarchs in person for the first time. And we actually find out, first of all, the Queen of the Nine Cloud Court is throwing a fucking tantrum, even though she's a monarch and really absolutely cannot compete against Underlords. I'm not going to go through everybody, but I will mention Emrys Silentborn, the Monarch Remnant, which I didn't know remnants could ascend like that. It's like a conscious thing. How? What? I don't like it. We have Northstrider, who's going to go and see the Beast King, which I'm really hopeful that means that Zeal is going to compete somehow. Yes, please. I would love to see more of exhausted, bored Zeal. And then the Aurelius clan, in the ruins of their ancestral home, is still in mourning over the loss of their monarch. Who? What? Who is that? What? Their clan has as deep a foundation as any, so they're invited to participate in the Uncrowned King tournament, but there is fierce debate. So, how, though? How is Ethan not part of that group? How is he Black Flame Empire and not Aurelius clan? They determine that their fate will be even worse should they try to hide. Why would you want to hide? What are you talking about? And then Red Moon Hall. Oh, really? They get to compete too? I don't want them anywhere near any of this. I don't like it. And then suggested topic, connections between the Aurelius family's fallen monarch and Ethan Aurelius. Denied. Report complete. I'm so far over time. Last thing. Weishi Kelsa. She stole fruit. She's still in the orchard. She's trying to hide. She hides for a bit. It's amazing to go back to this and read how they're still functioning with their like, oh, that's an enforcer and that's a forger. And she's an iron and is like, oh, these jades. And I'm like, girl, you don't even know. And she finally almost gets caught and begins to sprint off. And she basically runs headfirst into Orthos. And Orthos is like, sup? Your brother sent me. And she's like, we got to get out of here. Can you run? And he says, yeah, no, I can't. I can fight. And that is the end of that section. What is he doing there? What is he doing there? And why is she hiding? Because I know that the Heaven's Glory School sent people to his family's place after he like fucked everything up. But I don't know what happened to them at all. Anyway, I gotta go. I'm so over time. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. Thank you to all of you for hanging out with me in the chat. The next book is Uncrowned. I'll be starting it on Tuesday of next week. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.